As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest tonight. Weir, founder of roadtoruta.com, is here with us again on Reluctant Preppers. He's here to weigh in on what lies ahead in 2017, give us a preview of the most likely phenomenon that we're likely to have to watch out for and be aware of and prepared for as we enter this new year. Bix, thank you for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
It's nice to be here, Dunnigan.
If we could first get your take on a phenomenon that we've talked about with several of our guests recently. It's a chilling one to me, and it's one that has continued to press itself into my mind as terms of the real impact on ordinary people, and that is the move towards a cashless society. What do you see as you look at the driving factors that are pushing us to a cashless society as the real impacts on ordinary people and the pitfalls that we need to be aware of?
Well, this is a push by the bad guys. I think it's their final push, as I call them, the bad guys. These are people who want to take away freedom and liberty from their constituencies, be it on a national level, be it wherever you're looking at. Anybody who says we want to get rid of cash, we want to go to a system that is controlled by the government, because once you go to a cashless society, all transactions are within the preview of whoever rules over you. So they'll say it's in the name of stopping counterfeiting and stopping the drug running and illicit currency transactions. That's all baloney. What they're looking to do is take away your ability to live basically in a society without the government hovering over you. They want to control you. They want to be able to cut you off when you disagree with them. And that's where all this is going. There is nobody who should stand up and say, "Oh, that's fine if you take away our currency because it's it would be good for the law enforcement to catch drug runners." The biggest drug runners in the world are law enforcement. So it's one of those things where we really have to fight this one. I think it's the final push by these bad guys that have run and ruined our lives for so long. So yeah, I think it's really important that everybody stands up and says, no, you're not going to take away our cash, because that's our last freedom when it comes to economics, is the ability to control your own transactions without the government hovering over you and knowing what you're doing, and especially having the ability to cut you out of society with a click of a mouse.
And in trying to stand up for your rights, what are some practical steps that an ordinary person can take? If you could just kind of walk us through what you think are the most realistic ones.
Well, I think some of the most realistic ones would be to get yourself some alternative currencies. If they want to take away the U.S. dollar or any government-regulated currency, get yourself something else. Gold and silver coin has historically been the best thing to go into, not because they go up in price, but because when fiat currencies end, which they all have ended, this has been the longest run. It's been a long time, but this fiat system will end once the system is abused enough, which is getting really close. Get yourself some gold and silver coins. Get yourself some Bitcoin. I'm a big advocate of Bitcoin, knowing that it's a decentralized currency, and it's not a worry about, it's still electronic. Yes, it is electronic, but it's not controlled by the banks. And it's very kind of it's very similar to gold in that one Bitcoin in America can be traded and used and has the same value as one Bitcoin in South Africa, just like gold. So it's not bound by any nation. It's decentralized, meaning there's no overlord bank or government or central bank who's going to look over you. And also hoard yourself some cash. Obviously, go for the smaller bills, because and we can see this happening in India right now. They're taking away all the big bills. That's how they start it. And then all of a sudden, the average Joe on the street has a hard time doing any transactions. So they're handing out debit cards like they're going out of style. But it's just horrible what's going on. And when you have people like Larry Summers in the United States saying it's time, we need to start banning cash, that that's something we have to fight, and fight vocally also. Get out there and when people say stuff like this, get on the internet, call your congressman and say, no, you will not take away our cash. It's part of our nation. Our currency is the most important part of what our founding fathers were putting together back when they set up the United States. And I'm just speaking for the United States because we are the world's reserve currency. And if they decide to take away the world's reserve currency, every single human being on planet Earth should stand up and say, no, we're not gonna fall for it this time.
Just before we got on the air, I just walked away from, I heard the local news channel, and they were talking about the pressure after the holidays of people, your relatives wanting to have you float them free loans and that sort of thing. And one person said, yeah, that's the reason I don't carry cash, so I can always show my empty wallet and say, see, I don't have any to lend you. And it's like the real dangers you need to watch out for isn't just your family members trying to borrow from you. It's those who take and never give back. So,
well, yeah, I agree, and I mean, cash is the last part of economic freedom that we have. The government wants to know everything we're doing at all times, not for our own good, and really not to stop crime. They want it for control. They want to be able to turn off your livelihood and your ability to function with a click of a mouse, and that's what we got to fight against.
If we could turn our attention to the 2017 preview of the year ahead here, what your research shows you and convinces you are the most likely outcomes that we should be, and signals that we should be watching for, people who want to be aware and prepared. What should they be watching for in 2017? And then based on that, what are some practical preparedness steps that people should be taking? So if you could show us your view of 2017 from a preparedness preview.
Well, sure. 2017 is a year of transition. You see transition all over the place. I mean, it started probably with the Brexit, when the British people voted to go against their bankers' wishes, and that was a surprise vote and a surprise outcome. It wasn't. Truthfully, I don't think it was that surprising for those of us who believe that behind the scenes there are what I call the good guys taking out these bad guys that have controlled us for so long. So it wasn't that big a surprise, just like the Trump vote wasn't that big of a surprise for me, because I know there's a faction of what I call the good guys who were trying to get Trump in there for, so he can create some kind of a smooth transition out of our current monetary system and into something new. I don't agree with what they're doing. I think the ability for these bad guys to mess things up even worse than pulling the Band-Aid is very high. I mean, they can do a lot of things, but supposedly behind the scenes everything's going as planned. These bad guys, these criminals who have controlled us, are being taken out one by one, group by group, area by area. So we'll see when Trump gets in office. A lot of people didn't even think he'd get this far. But you're also seeing, once he gets in office, and yes, it looks like he's nominating all these kind of neocons to his cabinet. But remember, there's a process that they have to go through also. And the Democrats are already saying they're going to throw wrenches in that process of vetting these people. A couple of them, Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, is the computer rigger for Goldman Sachs. So what does that tell me if he gets in the Treasury Secretary's office? That tells me there's going to be a continued market rigging in a Trump administration. And we don't want to see that. And that would be the first sign within the first couple of weeks. If we continue to see gold and silver being suppressed in price, those are the first couple of weeks. We need to stand up and say, Trump's a bad guy. Trump's a bad guy. This, you cannot continue this game that they're playing. It has destroyed so many lives in so many countries, and the computer manipulation, computer control that the United States has right now over every single country is just phenomenal. And they can shut countries off like they did in Venezuela. And then you have people dying in the streets, eating zoo animals. It is so bad what we are doing. but we can do it with computers and derivatives, and that's exactly what we do out of the U.S. Treasury. So if Trump brings in this guy Mnuchin, and Mnuchin does what his predecessors have done, Tim Geithner and Jack Lew right now, then I would say there is no difference between this Trump good guy supposedly and all the bad guys before him. But if he doesn't do that, if he lets gold and silver be freely traded, even a little bit at the beginning and let it cut loose. You can't let it loose right away, or it's going to destroy all markets. And the stock market. I mean, it's being rigged every day as well. So this is the year of transition. You're seeing it in Europe also, in the French election, which I think is in late April. Marine Le Pen says she's going to leave the euro. That's gigantic. If France bails on the euro and goes back to the franc, the euro is done. So, yeah, and she's leading the polls, and I think it's April 23rd is their election. So, yeah, this is the year of transition. So during the year, we're going to have a lot to go through, and you do have to prepare yourself. I think you're going to see a collapse early on in the first quarter, an economic collapse, a social collapse, and then kind of a reevaluation of where we are, where we stand, and a lot of revelations of the things that our government hides from us. If the people win and the people who run our government now are taken out, I think we will see a lot of new technology, new innovation, and we'll plan by year's end. Hopefully, we'll be able to kind of see a way forward and rebuild and move forward. But it's going to be very, very, very chaotic in the first 6 months of this year, and probably throughout the entire year, as we have to make this transition. We have to remove these evil people who have been controlling and destroying our lives, and we have to move forward. So I think everybody needs to prepare in so many different ways, not just holding gold and silver in your safe in your own possession, but think about during the transition, what's going to happen if your power goes out? What's going to happen if you don't have the communication via the internet that you always had? Who are the neighbors you're going to go to? I think that's a big thing. Is your local community is basically all you'll have for a little while, probably months, maybe 6 months, maybe if it goes badly, maybe even years. So you need to make short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans, and hope for the short term, because this could go on. I don't like saying it, but it really could devolve into like a Mad Max type of scenario where we're just out there on our own for years before this thing gets kind of turned around.
It sounds like from your outlook, this is going to be a climatic year. It sounds like you don't expect us to get through 2017 without a major collapse and restart of our financial system.
Well, yeah, it has to happen. If you look at what's going on in Europe and you look at the derivative situation, yes, they secretly gave a backdoor bailout to Deutsche Bank, but it's only temporary. Monte dei Paschi, the big Italian bank, has just gotten bailed out by the Italian government. And the EU came in and said, oh, by the way, they don't need 5 billion euro, they need 8.8 billion euro. And the Italian finance minister is just like, what are you talking about? These things are so precarious to start with. And then, we announce our plans and you come in and say it's not enough. Somebody's pulling strings somewhere to say they want the collapse to happen. They need the collapse to happen. And I think it's on both sides. I've said it for a long time that the bad guys need to collapse because they're in deep trouble and they want to hide all their crimes and sins. And the good guys want to collapse because they want to get the bad guys out of there and they want to start something new. And that's kind of where we are. So, yeah, I do see it happening this year. And I think we've started to see it already with the Brexit and then Trump winning the vote. I think there's a lot that's going to go on as far as when Trump takes office. Obama is no longer in charge of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is the main fund that they do all the computer manipulations out of the Fed New York and out of in the basement of the U.S. Treasury. They have a computer trading desk and they do a lot of the market rigging from there. But it's all controlled by the president. and he can either say, "Yeah, run with it," Mnuchin, I think that's the guy's name, his pick for Treasury Secretary, or he can say, "Shut it down." We can't run this system on fake numbers and false market values forever. And at some point, reality's got to kick in, and it's not going to be easy any time we do it, but it'll be a lot easier now than in 4 years from now or 8 years from now. And people will stop dying in these wars that they run just to cover their tracks.
Are you looking now? Trump has had this slogan of draining the swamp, and that seems to imply exposing or discontinuing some of these backdoor secret manipulations, that kind of thing. Are you expecting, again, you mentioned early indicators of whether there'd be a change in the manipulation and suppression of precious metals prices. It sounds like you're also looking for a direction or a signal on whether we're going to see any sort of coming clean on these false government statistics and metrics that have been propping up sort of the false picture of the economy. Are there any specifics you're going to be watching to see whether there's any what would be draining of the swamp from your standpoint? What are you watching for?
Well, the biggest for me would be the manipulation of the precious metal markets, because that's what holds the fiat system together. You can't have an unbacked fiat monetary system without controlling the price of gold and silver and oil and other commodities, but it's mainly gold and silver. And it's interesting that last year Deutsche Bank came clean and said, yes, we have been rigging the silver market, and oh, by the way, we're going to provide all this information and proof that these other banks were doing it as well for years. And that's what I've been fighting for since the late 90s. And the CFTC ran 3 investigations saying, no, there's no silver market rigging. And now we have proof positive. And has the CFTC said one word about that? No, not a word. You have a direct confession and evidence turned over of silver manipulation, and the CFTC has not said a word. That's their only job, is to stop manipulation. So I think right now they're on hold because of the Obama administration is not going to let them pull that plug. When Trump gets in, I am hoping and I am expecting that's one of the first plugs he pulls is to say, okay, you guys have been rigging the silver market. And I know he knows all about it. He's a big gold guy. He knows all about what's going on. If he doesn't pull the plug within the first few weeks of his administration, I'm the first one who's going to be jumping up and down saying he's a fraud, because that's the thing that has to be done. It's already out in the open. Everybody knows about it. And the CFTC is run by, it's a very political organization. This is the commodities. It's like the SEC of commodities. And they do what they're told. And I've been on their case for years and shown how many lies. Even there's 2 judges that are work for the CFTC that basically are the ones who decide whether commodity rigging is happening or not. One of the judges, Judge George Painter, left the CFTC because he said the other judge, Judge Levine, was too criminal and too corrupt for him to work there. It's insane how our system works, but that's the way it was made to work by these bad guys who control our lives. So yes, I do think when the Trump administration gets in, there's going to be some very big decisions to drain the swamp. It's not just going to be the economic swamp. It's going to be all the criminals in Congress. And everybody says, oh yeah, my congressman's a criminal. They're all criminals. Well, there's worse criminals than we can even imagine. And I think that everybody is very afraid in Congress, in the U.S. government, within the CIA, within the military, anybody who's been doing some bad deeds for the current controllers of our lives are going to be shown the door or shown the noose, because it's the end. I do think Trump will drain the swamp, but the first swamp that needs to be drained is the electronic fraud on the markets, and that's a huge swamp. And that's where the bad guys, as I call them, that's where they get their power, is through the phony money out there. So you take that away, and they can't hire their henchmen to fight their fights for them. you'd have, George Soros and the Clintons and the Bushes standing there naked with nobody to protect them because you've taken their money spigots away, and nobody really likes these people. They just work for them because that's all they were getting paid well, and that's the way the system works. You take that away, and they're left completely naked, and hopefully there will be trials, and these people will be brought in front of the people, not in front of Trump, but in front of the people to say, this is what was done to you. How do you want the justice system to deal with them?
You mentioned one more thing about not needing to spend so much on foreign wars, that kind of thing. But we're hearing that Trump's thoughts are to dramatically bolster and build up the U.S. military, perhaps particularly the Navy. How do you interpret that direction?
I think Trump's plan is to spend a hell of a lot of money. And that's the easiest way to destroy the dollar, and that's what they've been trying to do for a long time is spend more money than you have, because that would implode the U.S. dollar, and then you can go back to like a gold standard or whatever standard you want to do. But Trump is a negotiator. He's playing. Of course, he's going to play the tough guy, and whether or not he uses that power is a different thing. He's playing a lot of games behind the scenes that nobody really knows what he's going to do next, and that's what he wants. He wants to keep everybody on their toes. He's playing the hard man with China right now, and at some point he might say, okay, no, we won't want everything, but here's what we do want. And China needs the United States. Everybody, I've even said, no, China doesn't need us. They have 1.2 billion people in China. They don't need U.S. dollars. Well, they do, as long as the fiat system is in place. And China has a lot of problems on their own. They've rehypothecated all their markets as well, and they saw what the U.S. was doing in the 2008 crash, and they said, well, we're going to do it, but we're going to do it 10 times bigger. If you're going to cheat, we're going to cheat 10 times more than you, and that's what they've been doing, and they're ready for the implosion too. So, I think it'll be really interesting. Definitely, this year is a huge year of transition, and a lot of these things, they aren't going to be easy to transition. From this nanny state that we live in today to something where we take care of ourselves. It's not going to be an easy thing. All these people who are banking on Hillary Clinton's, handouts and the Democratic handouts, what are you going to do now that when you get your EBT card taken away? See, things like that, it's not going to be an easy transition. And I know that Trump and this certain section of the good guys want this transition to go smoothly, but truthfully, I don't think it can. I don't see how it can. I think we'd be better off just pulling the Band-Aid, crashing everything, and starting over.
One thing you just mentioned, I wanted to follow back up on. You said China needs the U.S. because we're still the world reserve currency. If the U.S. dollar is taken out and collapses and is no longer fit to be the the world reserve currency, will not only China but other nations in the world no longer have the same need for the U.S.? And what does that look like for the U.S.'s future?
Well, the U.S. dollar will be the last unbacked fiat currency. It's not like China can take over as the world's reserve currency. When you destroy the dollar, which is the world's reserve currency, then you destroy faith in all currencies, all unbacked currencies. The faith in the euro is going. The faith in all unbacked currencies is going. So when these do collapse, it will be a calamity, because everybody who bought into the system and saved all their pennies and put them in their FDIC insured accounts are going to lose everything they ever had. They would never, ever, ever trust an unbacked fiat currency again. The world will look very, very different when the collapse happens. And the collapse will happen probably starting in the derivative market, because the derivative market ensures that all unbacked fiat money gets destroyed, and all kind of offshoots of money. Derivatives are offshoots of money. There's all kinds of things that are offshoots of money, and your 401k. Interesting thing about about your stock market certificates is that they're all rehypothecated. They've all been abused for so long. You put money in your 401k, they don't go out and buy that stock for you. They give you a statement that says they do, but they haven't done it in years. They put it into a pool, and in that pool they they leverage it up 10 or 20 times and make bets in other ways. So, yeah, it's going to get really, really ugly when the game of musical chairs stops on stock market and bond market and the U.S. dollar related instruments like interest rate swaps and all this stuff comes crumbling down. There'll be nothing left. That's why they put it off so long, is that it's such a big deal and such a gigantic transition that nobody's had the balls to say no more. And I think we've hit that point, and somebody's going to pull that plug very soon.
And following up on that last point that you had made after the China point was, you said we're transitioning from the expectation that had been set up if Hillary Clinton had won the presidency of a expanded nanny state, which had already been greatly expanded under the Obama regime. But now we're going to have to learn how to take care of ourselves. So that brings it all the way back to our channel's mission of awareness and preparedness for the individual family. So if you could underscore again what you consider to be the most essential action steps that an individual family needs to do to really take care of themselves in the year ahead.
I didn't used to say this, but you're going to need a gun. I hate to say it, but because the transition is going to be so disruptive, as in on every level, I do think you're going to need a gun, not to go out and be aggressive with, but for protection, to protect your friends, to protect your family, to protect your possessions. And then you're going to need some food and water and gold and silver, obviously. I'm a big advocate of Bitcoin, all held outside of the system. There can be nobody between you and your assets. Nobody between you and your gold and silver coins need to be in your own possession. Your Bitcoin needs to be printed out on a paper wallet and held in your own possession in your safe, because there will be no third parties that survives this crash. The bubble is too big on the derivative side. And everybody says, oh my God, the bond bubble is gigantic, or the stock market bubble. That's nothing compared to the derivatives. Hundreds of trillions, if not quadrillions of dollars in derivatives are held by a handful of banks. And those banks, if one of them goes down, they call them too big to fail. And the reason they call them too big to fail is that if one of them fails, every other financial asset is lost by every bank, because they're all interconnected. So yeah, get yourself prepared. I used to tell my subscribers to think that you're going on a camping trip off the grid for a month or so. And what would you need? You need light, you need fire, you need warmth, you need clothes, you need a ham radio. You can go down a list, and there's plenty of lists on the internet if you want to do a search. I'm sure your site you've had plenty of guests who have talked about what to do, but now is the time. This is the transition year, and you can see it everywhere you look with the Brexit and Trump and the coming crashing of the euro and the changes in Italy and France. I would say China is changing rapidly as well. Now is the time to be fully prepared, to go down your checklist and say, have I done everything I can to my best ability to survive something that would be very disruptive?
Well, Bix, if people want to find out more of your view of the year ahead, where can they find out your work?
You can go to roadtoruta.com, and I send out free emails. There's a little box you can put your email address in there, and you'll get an email every couple of days.
Thank you very much again, Bix, for being here with us on Reluctant Preppers and giving us this 2017 preview. Sounds like it's going to be a very eventful year. When we were talking before the interview, you said it's a exciting year and a frightening year, and they're both true. And just thank you for being here with us and helping us take a look at the road ahead.
Okay, thanks for having me on.